So I'm, I guess, a documentary photographer, you could say. The labels are not super important, I guess, but I I work in a documentary style mostly, and usually photograph people and communities. And I'm interested in the relationship between industrial landscapes and residential landscapes and communities. And I guess in general, just the relationship between industries and communities and how they intersect, and the ways in which industrial capitalism informs our lives in a lot of places, and I guess everywhere, really.
That's a very important conversation. And I just wanted to say that you capture a lot of these elements so eloquently. It's as if I don't even need words. I can completely understand a picture just by looking at it.
I tend to work in series of images. Do you tend to work in series or more in single images, or how do you approach your work?
It definitely depends on the idea that I have in mind, or if I just happen to have my camera and I'm capturing moments. There are certain pieces that are complete series. In my website, I have in my portfolio Inuyunga, which is Inuktitut for either I'm Inuk or I'm human or I'm alive. Depending on the dialect, it changes everywhere, but within that folder, they're all series, but a lot of things like my landscapes or gritty urban scenes, some of those are just happen to be.
So what have you been working on lately?
Prior to the lockdown, I had these pieces with Autumn Peltier. She is a water activist for an Anishinaabe nation. She's the chief water protector. And Ma Mariah, we did these pieces, the series on All Eyes on Mi'kmaq, focusing on our support to the fisheries on the East Coast and the whole. And prior to that, there were a few pieces I had done regarding missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit with Mama Raya. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I documented pieces of the Black Lives Matter movement. How have you been navigating COVID and photography over in Toronto?
Most of my work traditionally hasn't been in Toronto. Like, I live in Toronto, but most of my work is in the East Coast, where I'm from. I'm from St. John, New Brunswick. And I'd say biggest project that I'm working on right now is based there. It's called the Cloud Factory. That's about the relationship between the big industry there and the people who live there, which is very complicated because St. John is kind of a company town, and there's a lot of industrial pollution. But I did have sort of a project that sprung out of wanting to work differently. I've got this one that I'm planning to release as a book called Stay Solid or Move West.
Wow.
And it's like a diaristic sort of approach, and I'm using mostly disposable cameras. And it started a few years ago. It started actually before the pandemic, but the pandemic sort of helped make sense of it in a weird way. So like, I just wanted to take more pictures in Toronto because I don't normally. So I started, this was like a couple winters ago. And so I realized that I could easily put a disposable camera in my jacket pocket and just have it on me wherever I went. So I started just photographing my neighborhood and friends and my life, my partner, these kind of things. I sort of, like, my practice before was very photojournalistic. Like, I had both an art and photojournalism background. And a lot of my earliest work, well, not my earliest work, because I think I started more on the artistic side and then ended up more as a journalist, was looking at other people's lives. And so COVID kind of pushed me to look inward a bit, which I think is a good thing in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, kind of hard sometimes.
Yeah.
But definitely.
Yeah. And so I guess your work is has a lot to do with looking at your own community and history. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I do definitely want to bring forth important conversations with Indigenous in Canada regarding my work. No matter what the topic at hand is, I had unearthed some images from recently from my vault, I could say, about my brother Simon Atuyuk. He was an Inuk, and he took his life. And I'm since COVID also exploring what the impacts of acculturation, the social, the economic, and the spiritual, what and why Inuit suicide rates are the highest in the world. I've been also looking back in history to the changes that Inuit have faced over time. A lot of my knowledge has came from Nunavut Sivuniksavut, and as they like to call it, the NS Inuit curve. And the curve is a graph, a line graph, and it explains the power, the autonomy, the independence of Inuit taken over time through the introduction of newcomers and the changes that came forth with that, and understanding Inuit intergenerational trauma through some of the systemic and it's this whole piece that as I navigate my grief, I'm trying to learn and understand more to see how we can all make positive changes with various different types of issues that we face. And photography has been a way to express myself, to help share the messages that I want to, and to help create awareness and conversations through my work, because I feel that art, being so subjective, everyone can see the same piece together, and all shared in their own feelings and ways to reconcile and to heal and to move forward, and to just the first and foremost thing is bringing awareness, and I really like to express myself and situations through my art because I find that very healing.